ever feel like, truth is just way stranger than fiction?
Yeah.
Well, today, we're diving into a topic that'll probably have you questioning what you thought you knew about, well, the skies above us.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We're talking about Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAPs.
UAPs, all right.
And to help us navigate this, we've got Ryan Graves' story.
Ryan Graves, okay.
He's a former Navy fighter pilot, and get this, he went from, dismissing UFOs to actually testifying about them in front of Congress.
Wow, that's quite a turnaround. So we're talking about a total 180 here.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you think about, what's considered a risk to national security and what they tell us, the public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to, try to unpack today.
Sounds good.
We've got a bunch of articles, interviews, all about Graves' time as a Navy pilot. Now, he's not out here claiming it's aliens or anything.
Right.
But it's really concerned about aviation safety.
Yeah.
And how the government's responding or not responding to these, unexplained events.
Which is interesting, right? I mean, you've got Graves, this pilot, he's got this whole Maverick thing going on. Not exactly who you'd picture talking about UFOs.
Yeah, not your typical UFO enthusiast.
And yet here he is pushing for transparency, wanting a deeper look into UAPs. And it all kind of goes back to his time with the Red Rippers Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in 2014, 2015. They were doing their training exercises off the East Coast, and that's when things got a little strange.
So hold on. We're talking seasoned pilots flying these really advanced FA-18s.
The best of the best.
And they start picking up these unexplained things on their fancy new radar systems.
Exactly. And these weren't, just your average radar blips. We're talking strange movements, this jitteriness almost, like these UAPs were constantly changing position in the air.
Okay, so something's off.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Pilots, radar operators, they've been reporting this kind of erratic behavior from UFOs for decades. It seems like with this new radar, the ANA PG79 AAE, it's much more sensitive, so now they're picking up these subtle movements that they might have missed before.
It's like, imagine you go from that old brick phone to the latest smartphone. Suddenly you see things you never knew existed.
Totally.
Except in this case, it's not blurry photos. It's objects just popping up, vanishing, just hanging out in midair.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder what's going on up there.
You said it. And these weren't just like one-off events either. These sightings were happening regularly. Sometimes they'd even last for hours.
No way, for hours.
Hours.
And it wasn't like a game of radar tag, right? These pilots were actually seeing these UAPs with their own eyes.
Yeah, they even got them on infrared cameras.
Wow.
And this is where the story gets really interesting. You ready for the cube in a sphere?
Okay, the cube in a sphere. Lay it on me.
So you've got these two pilots from Graves Squadron, right?
Yeah.
They almost hit this UAP, and they described it as this black or dark gray cube inside of a clear, translucent sphere.
All right, what?
They were entering their designated training area, and this thing just appears out of thin air.
A cube in a sphere. That doesn't sound like your typical radar glitch. I mean, what was your first thought when you heard these pilot reports?
Honestly, it's definitely not what you'd expect to hear from, experienced military pilots. And what's really strange is how the lead pilot reacted.
How so?
Well, they said he reacted like he'd seen something similar before, even though this cube thing was new to them.
So you're thinking this isn't a one-time thing, even for him.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how often these encounters are happening. And that leads us to, I think, the biggest head-scratcher in all of this.
Which is?
The government's response, or lack of response.
Right. You'd think nearly hitting a mysterious cube would be, I don't know, a big deal, like full-blown investigation, sirens, the works, right?
Right.
But they basically just told these pilots to shut up and keep flying.
Pretty much. After that cube incident, there was no official order or anything, but they got the message loud and clear.
Don't talk about this.
Exactly. Not even to each other.
Which, let's be real, just makes people suspicious. And this culture of silence, it's not just pilots, right?
No, not at all. The government itself, they've got this history of downplaying UAP reports. They say it's mistaken aircraft, weather, even hoaxes.
Yeah, and I get it. They don't want to clog up the system with false alarms.
Right.
But there's also this feeling that they don't want people freaking out, thinking we're being invaded by who knows what.
It's like they'd rather keep us in the dark than admit they might not have all the answers.
Oh.
I mean, it's a tough spot, isn't it? They've got to protect the country, keep the airspace safe.
Right.
But then there's all this classified stuff, and they don't want to cause a panic. It's a balancing act, for sure.
But honestly, doesn't all this secrecy just make those conspiracy theories worse?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if they were just up front, even a little, admitting that maybe, just maybe, there's something weird going on. Wouldn't that be better than letting everyone's imaginations run wild?
100%. This whole hush-hush thing has been going on for decades, and it just breeds distrust. And it's not just the government. Even in aviation, there's this pressure to keep quiet about UAPs.
Like what happened with Ryan Graves. That shush order after the cube.
Exactly.
That's like admitting you saw something you can't explain as career suicide.
That's the fear, anyway. And that's exactly what Graves and groups like Americans for Safe Aerospace are trying to change. They're saying, look, this not talking about it, this fear of reporting, it's actually dangerous.
I can see that.
Yeah.
If you don't even admit there might be a problem, how can you fix it? Or even try to prevent it?
Exactly.
It's like ignoring a crack in your windshield and hoping it'll just magically go away.
That's a good way to put it. And that's why Graves is pushing for things like the Safe Airspace for Americans Act.
Right.
This would make the FAA come up with clear rules for reporting UAP sightings.
So cut through some of the secrecy.
Exactly.
And it does feel like the government's stance on all this is changing, even if it's slow. We have those Pentagon videos, the hearings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People are talking about a new task force to investigate UAPs.
It's definitely a shift. And you know who's played a big part? The media. Remember that article in the New York Times back in 2017, the one about the Pentagon's secret UFO program?
Oh, yeah. That blew the whole thing wide open.
Right. And then you have the Chinese balloon and those other unidentified things they shot down. Suddenly, UAPs weren't just a conspiracy theory anymore.
Front page news.
Exactly. The media is really putting pressure on the government to be more open. And it's not just the public either. Even inside the Pentagon, the intelligence agencies, they're worried. They're starting to see UAPs as a potential threat.
So what are we talking about here? Are these, like, super advanced drones from other countries? Or something even weirder?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've got all sorts of theories floating around.
Right.
Misidentified planes, weather stuff, secret government tech.
Yeah.
And yeah, even aliens.
Okay, let's break down some of these theories. Let's start with that cube in a sphere. Could that have been some kind of, I don't know, high-tech radar reflector, like something out of a spy movie?
Some people have said it could be similar to the technology they used in the CIA's Project Palladium back in the 60s.
What was that?
They were launching these balloons from submarines.
From submarines.
Yeah, to try and mess with Soviet radar.
Wow.
So it's like a, modern-day Trojan horse, but in the sky.
Okay.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
Even if the cube looks the part, some experts, people like Dr. Xavier Muldoug, they're saying it'd be practically impossible to fake those images the pilots saw on their instruments. Remember, they saw it with their own eyes, too. It wasn't just on the radar.
So it's not just some radar trickery.
Doesn't seem like it.
Okay, so what about the theory that these UAPs are actually really advanced weapons, drones or something, being tested by China, Russia, somebody like that?
That's a big concern, especially now with all the tension between those superpowers. We know they've been building more and more of those unmanned aircraft, some with really incredible capabilities.
And some people say they could launch those things from submarines, get them closer without being detected.
It's possible. And that's why we need better ways to keep an eye on our airspace. But even then, that doesn't explain everything about these UAPs, how they move so fast, so erratically.
Yeah, like they're breaking the laws of physics.
Exactly. And that brings us to the theories that are a little more, shall we say, out there.
The fringe stuff.
The stuff that really makes you wonder. We're talking about the possibility that some of these UAPs are things we've never seen before, things we don't understand.
And completely unknown.
Completely. It's a possibility. We can't just ignore it no matter how strange it sounds.
And it's important to remember, Ryan Graves, he hasn't said what he thinks these things are. He just wants more transparency, more investigation.
He wants to figure it out the right way, using science and facts.
And, it's interesting, his own journey from skeptic to believer, it's kind of like what's happening in the larger conversation about UAPs, isn't it?
Oh, so?
It's like people are starting to take it seriously, like that stigma is fading. More people are open to the idea that there might be something more to these sightings.
That's a good point. You're seeing it everywhere. The media is talking about it more seriously. Scientists, academics, they're getting involved. Even the government is saying, maybe we need to look into this.
Right. It's like we're entering a new era of UAP discussion. People are being more open-minded, thinking critically, instead of just laughing it off.
Which is a good thing.
It is. Because whether these UAPs turn out to be drones we've never seen before, or weird weather, or something else entirely, they make us question what we know.
They challenge us.
They remind us that we don't know everything. It's like we always try to put things in a box, you know?
Right. Categorize everything.
Yeah, make it all fit into what we already know. But what if something comes along that doesn't fit? Something that makes us rethink what's possible.
It can be unsettling, for sure. Makes you realize how much we don't know. And maybe even face some of our own biases.
And that's what I find so interesting about all this. It's not about saying, oh, it's aliens, or the government's hiding everything. It's about being okay with not knowing, being curious, and being humble enough to say, maybe I don't have all the answers.
Exactly. This whole UAP thing, it's an invitation to explore. Not just the skies, but also, the limits of our own understanding.
It's realizing there might be more to reality than we think, and being open to where that takes us.
And it's about having these conversations, being open-minded, thinking critically, instead of just shutting down ideas we don't like.
We need more people like Ryan Graves, people who aren't afraid to speak up, to share what they've seen.
To challenge the way things are.
Because at the end of the day, finding the truth, no matter what it is, that's what matters.
Truth is important.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all this?
Don't be afraid to question what you think you know. The universe is a mysterious place.
It really is.
And the more we explore, the more we realize we've got to learn.
And the UAP phenomenon, it's a perfect example of that, isn't it? It shows us that what we think is real can change, and that the biggest discoveries, they usually come from questioning what we believe and being brave enough to explore the unknown.
And who knows? Maybe someday we'll look back at this time and see it as the start of something new. A time when we finally figure out what these UAPs are and maybe even learn more about ourselves and our place in the universe.
It's a journey that starts with a single step. Just looking up, wondering, and never being afraid to ask questions. Keep exploring.